Behind me are some of the world's fastest esports drivers, and today they're driving a real race car for the first time. I'm going to be comparing against them in the Radical myself and in the autocross. This is my first time here in this car, in this track, and oh my god, this is one of the coolest tracks I've ever been to, so you guys are going to really enjoy this onboard. So without further ado, let's see if we can find the world's fastest gamer. As someone who made the jump from sim racing to real life racing myself, I know exactly what these drivers are going through. And because of that, Racing Prodigy has invited me here as a judge alongside some of the racing industry's biggest legends. Over the next 3 days, we'll be thoroughly testing these gamers in an NFL-style combine evaluation called Prodigy Week. And this is for the chance to win a professional contract in the real-life Prodigy Racing League coming later this year. Oh, and to see what these gamers are truly made of, I'm going to be getting behind the wheel myself alongside them. But before we do that, you're probably wondering how these gamers got here in the first place. Well, Racing Prodigy is an E2Real competition that shares my mission of making racing accessible for all. Now, if you're a racing fan, you probably already know that it takes hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars before you ever can land a professional contract in racing, which means there are so many talented drivers out there that go completely unnoticed. Racing Prodigy's aim is to completely flip the industry up on its head, to source drivers purely based on talent. And right now, the best place to find talent is in sim racing because it has the lowest barrier to entry. Throughout 2023, Racing Prodigy hosted a number of online tournaments across multiple titles, including mobile, by the way, so that literally anyone with an internet connection and a dream could have the chance to compete. The winners of each of these tournaments won a spot in this Prodigy Week evaluation here at the Atlanta Motorsports Park. But it's also worth mentioning that a few of the drivers here today earned a spot without winning a tournament. Any driver within the top 500 could send in a video explaining why they deserve to be here, and judges such as myself selected a number of them. The goal of this evaluation and Prodigy Week 2 in the spring is to build a roster of drivers for real race team owners to select from. And this will be in the brand new IRL Championship hosted by Racing Prodigy later this year. Alright, so that's the backstory. Let's get into the evaluation. From the minute the drivers arrived from around the world, we got straight to work. Initial prep involved media training and skid pad, which I was unlucky enough to be a backseat passenger for. Now that the prep work has been ticked off, it's time to move on to karting. And luckily for us, we're not just doing this at any old rental karting track. This is Atlanta Motorsports Park own kart track, and honestly, it's better than a lot of car racing circuits I've been to. And the elevation changes are so intense that it even makes some karts go airborne. We divided up into teams of 4 with a coach or judge captaining for the 3 competitors. The collective points of the 4 drivers per team would determine if they moved up to the next round. Now, to be honest, as judges, we really didn't care about the results of this event because rental karting is inherently unfair. Rental karts are very hard to equalize mechanically, and even a driver's body type can severely impact handling. So what we were really looking for was how these drivers cope under pressure and how they behave off track when the adrenaline is still in their system. After all, a driver who can't keep their cool in a post-race interview is not attractive to advertisers. But of course, it was also just for a bit of a laugh and friendly competition. All right, it's qualifying. We've got 3 teammates in this. Oh my god, look at the elevation of this track. Oh my god. As I was riding behind my teammate Gustavo, I noticed something interesting. Yeah, Gustavo's locking up the brakes every lap, and my car's not even decelerating, so I think it might just have a brake issue. Later in the session, I tried a technique where I pumped the brake, and on the 3rd pump, okay, it looks like pumping the brake seems to work, and I finally did manage to lock the brakes. It's funny because this exact same thing happened to me while leading a race in Budapest a few years ago, so this instantly brought me back to that moment. In both situations, it was a bit of a band-aid solution, but that's what being a professional driver is all about. And in the end, I qualified 5th for our first heat. All right, so I guess I'm qualifying at the back for this, so. Although my teammates were all starting behind me, you never really know what's gonna happen in a kart race like this, especially at a crazy track like this one. So I did my best to hype out my teammates as much as possible, that is until this happened. Yep, my engine died because I lifted going up the incredibly steep hill. Oops. So while I was left miles behind, the rest of the pack were already half a lap ahead. Now, it's pretty clear from this footage that the consistency was missing, but this was right at the start of the race, and it wasn't long before the drivers got into a better rhythm, which led to some pretty incredible battles. One driver who did really well was my teammate Gustavo. Despite starting right behind me at the back of the pack, Gustavo managed to claw his way up to 3rd by dodging incidents and putting in solid lap times. But unfortunately for us as a team, the other team averaged a higher score, so we were knocked out first round. As an evaluation though, I learned a lot about the competitors, and I was super impressed with how they handled themselves in the post-race TV interviews. Up next was the fitness challenge, probably the part of this experience that the drivers were most nervous about, probably even more so than driving the real race car. Each of the competitors had to go through a series of driving-related fitness tests, including neck strength, reflex training, and cardio. The team at PitFit were responsible for conducting the physical evaluation. These guys are responsible for training a huge percentage of pro drivers in America, and they have extensive historical data of F1, Indy, and sports car drivers to compare our competitors against. We ended up being pleasantly surprised. Okay, sure. The report showed that they all still had a lot of work to do to be on the level of a professional driver. But every single one of them had a great baseline. There was, however, one really surprising result that shocked us all. And that was Gustavo's neck strength, which according to PitFit, he outperformed many IndyCar and NASCAR drivers. By Gustavo's own admission, that was with zero training prior whatsoever. So with the dreaded fitness test completed, it was now time to test the driver's skills on the autocross course. And joining me is Grand Theft Auto YouTuber Steve the Gamer 55. So we're gonna see if those GTA skills translate to a real car, and it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, let's do it. For sure.
Now, autocross is a great test for these gamers, and so many of the skills translate to a real race car. If you aren't familiar, autocross is essentially about driving a street car in a parking lot with cones as fast as you can. And for these drivers in particular, it's a great stepping stone before they hop into the real radical SR1 later on.
Well, gentlemen, that is autocross. I must say I am very impressed. Very few cones died, but we have a winner. Best time today, 24.6. David Dalton Jr. Well done.
Now, I wanted to use myself as a reference here to see truly how fast these gamers are. So for a single fast flyer, I gave it everything I had.
So it looks like Jesse Wuji came back at what, 25 seconds, right? A little over 25 seconds. What do you anticipate you could do?
I'm going for P1. David did a 24.6, I think it was. So I want to beat that.
I hear that. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Now, my launch off the line was pretty good, but now I'm having to learn the track as fast as possible. I definitely apexed a bit too early for this corner, so I'm gonna have to try and make up the rest of the time elsewhere. But just as it started to feel like I was getting used to the car, it was already over.
Ooh, little too much, baby. Damn, first autocross one. Not a bad time, still half a second off David, who's a BMW instructor actually.
Once each of the competitors had completed autocross, it was time for the moment they had all been waiting for, driving a real race car. And just like with a real race weekend, we kicked things off with a track walk so that everyone could learn every little detail about this track, myself included.
All right, track walk, turn one. Bunch of crazy high-level coaches, so excited to learn the track this way.
It's kind of a chicane. Green is basically a brake zone. You get pretty much turned in for two, and then straighten up and brake.
Yeah. So how are you guys feeling? You nervous?
Okay.
Exciting.
You're excited, yeah. Luckily, it doesn't look like it's wet. It was raining a little bit earlier. Hopefully, it's not greasy.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the oils start to release from the rubber line and stuff. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see how you guys perform. Almost got run over by a radical.
I know, right?
Yeah, are you excited? This is the first time in the
first
passenger seat of a race car, right?
Yeah.
I can't wait. I mean, these cars look pretty nimble. These are on treaded tires, which I wasn't expecting. They look pretty aggressive, compound, hand-cooked.
I see.
So that'll be interesting. I'm sure they move around a little bit, so that'll be fun.
About to hop in the SR1. Steve, the gamer's hopping in passenger seat in the SR3. So never driven a radical before. Lots to learn here. Only a few laps to try it out, but I'm really excited. It's like a mini prototype, but can't complain.
Make sure they're as tight as you can get them. Otherwise, when you go brake into turn one the first time, it's not going to feel so great.
I don't think so.
All right, did they show you getting in and out of neutral on this car?
No.
All right, you're going to get a quick lesson then. Really straightforward. It's a motorcycle transmission, and it has the neutral lockout.
Okay.
So, you've got this button here. Hold it down, green light comes on.
Okay.
So once the green light's on, just clutch in, downshift.
Okay.
Since it's a motorcycle gearbox, neutral sit between first and second.
Okay.
If it doesn't go in, off the clutch, back on the clutch, try it again. Just make sure this button is held down. Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. First gear. Yep. So if it doesn't go in, remember, just off the clutch, back on the clutch, try it again. There you go.
All right,
Going out on track in the Radical SR1 for the first time. First time in a prototype like this. Driven an LMP2, but very different. Oh, what a sound. All right, we gotta get temperature in before we do anything stupid. Get a feel for the grip. Yeah, there's nothing now. No temp. Oh, look at the compression through here. Use all the curve. Understeer downhill. All right, this should all be flat out now. Oh yeah, you can feel the G-forces through here. You can feel the GoPro trying to rig my helmet to the side. Oh, this is insane. Very early on the brakes just to get a feel for things.
With a few laps under my belt, it was time to try and put a quick lap in. This Radical SR1 is a great entry-level car that handles like a proper prototype, but without the snappiness of a high downforce slicks race car. I was actually really impressed with how forgivable it was, and I guess it makes perfect sense why the Primal Racing School chooses to teach their new drivers in these cars because of that. You'll notice that the throttle is only reading about 60%, and that's because these cars are running slightly detuned, but you definitely wouldn't be able to tell from where I'm sitting.
Oh, way more scary in fourth gear. Definitely need to do that in third. Oh, way better entry speed. Come on. All right, you gained a lot of time that lap. God, this car is so nice to drive. It's just so responsive to your driving inputs. It's a real proper race car, but it's forgiving, unlike most race cars. It's not super physical at all. The steering's relatively light, not hard on the neck really, at least compared to what I'm used to. Curious to see how these sim racers deal with it, because I can see like in there in the compression, you know, the steering definitely doesn't grade up. For a lot of these sim guys who have really never done anything in a real car, it's going to be a bit of a shock. I know some of them were struggling even with the rental karting yesterday. God, I hope Steve had as much fun as I did. God, what an experience. Huge thank you to Racing Prodigy and making this possible. Definitely a car I've always wanted to drive, and it definitely didn't disappoint. Hey.
All good?
Yeah, all good. Oh, such a fun car, man.
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
Dude, they're so much fun to drive. I love them.
Yeah, I'm still learning the track, to be honest. Every time I go up and flying across, I'm like, oh shit, oh.
Yeah, it's a pretty difficult track to learn.
Yeah.
That's part of why it's so good.
Yeah, you really got to get reference points. It's crazy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so you join me out of the car now. We're gonna be looking at some of the graphs here to see exactly where I was losing tons of performance. We don't have a reference lap, but there's definitely ways of noticing straight away what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. I have a feeling I know a few of those things already, but I wanna confirm it in the actual number. So let's take a look. So you'll notice there's a connector right there in the cockpit that says data. So we just plug this cable straight into there. We're able to read it off just like a USB flash drive basically. So here's the first things that I noticed straight away. This I knew was happening in the car, but I wasn't brave enough to fix it. So essentially I'm braking too early. I have a lot of pressure. I'm peaking that brake pressure straight away because we've got a bit of downforce in the car. You can afford to peak that brake pressure. But I know I braked too early, so I instantly released. Also, the car was kind of tending to lock up pretty easily. You can see how much chattering there is there in the RPMs. Like some of these are downshifts, obviously. You can see the downshifts there are measured by the blips and by this gear indicator. But some of that chattering is just the rears locking because the track is so bumpy. So I was releasing really early, not being confident on the bumps, and then getting back on the brake pedal once I felt more confident, which is a recipe for losing a ton of lap time in a big brake zone like that. So ideally I'd want to brake later, maybe even a little bit less peak pressure, but then holding it for a much longer time before releasing it, but keeping it consistent, not going on and off the brake pedal. Once I got a feel for the track myself and had a look through the data, I gave the drivers a few tips and tricks before they went out on track for the first time. While we as judges were certainly here to evaluate these drivers, Prodigy Week was just as much about educating them as well. In between on-track sessions, the judges and coaches were hosting classes and one-to-ones to impart as much knowledge as possible. The drivers even received media training from one of the top PR firms in the country, DKC. So far, the competitors have impressed the judges in literally everything they've done, but all of that was building up to the most important test of all. Are they actually fast in a real race car? Overall, the drivers were performing very well. The fastest times of the day were in the mid 126s, impressively close to my lap times. But of course, ultimate pace is not a measure of consistency, so there were a few mistakes as well. It had been an intense day for sure, so we called it a night to get rest for the final competition in the morning. But overnight, something rather unexpected
Good morning.
happened.
Our temperatures today in the 30s, clear skies, pretty light winds. We have
This presents a unique challenge our drivers have never faced before on the sim. Over the course of less than 24 hours, the temperature plummeted from 84 Fahrenheit to 34 degrees. And to be honest, I had never seen anything like it. Cold temperatures with racing tires is almost always a recipe for disaster. Have you ever left the pits in iRacing and you touch the throttle and you instantly spin? Well, that's pretty much what it feels like driving on stone cold tires in a real race car. But on the flip side, if you can slowly build the temperature up to the operating window without crashing, and you will experience a boost in grip and horsepower like you wouldn't believe. It's the classic chicken or the egg. Drive too slow and you'll never get temped. Drive too quickly and you'll swap ends before you can even realize it. But push up to the limit just right and it'll be like you're driving a brand new car. For safety reasons, the race director asked if I could help running some BMW pace cars, but to my surprise, driving this BMW was actually way more fun than I expected. Got our trusty BMW 3 Series here. So I'm in charge of keeping the pace and making sure these drivers, follow the rules basically for the race start. During qualifying, the drivers coped really well, and with the help of a bit of sleep and cold temperatures, the lap times improved a further 1.5 seconds from yesterday. For their final challenge, the drivers entered a heat-style 1v1 cat and mouse race. Because average lap time wins here, these races tested the drivers' consistency under pressure without the risk of car-to-car contact, which, of course, given their experience levels, is likely.
It might be within like
They were
10.
evil. It's close. 25 of all
The races were remarkably close, but it all came down to the final battle between Gustavo Ariel and Nathan Saxon. It was a tight race, with the drivers operating within just tenths of a second of each other every single lap. But in the end, the Brazilian driver Gustavo took the checker in first place overall. And just like that, Prodigy Week 1 came to an end. All the drivers improved massively, and most of them were getting times in the low 25s by the end of the week, which is absolutely incredible. The lap times were so close, but it was Gustavo, one of the top-ranked iRacers globally, who not only won the final race, but showed sportsmanship and perseverance throughout the entire competition. And by the way, all of the drivers you see here are eligible to be drafted into the Prodigy Racing League Real Life Series. Guys, I want to be super clear. This video is not an ad for Racing Prodigy, but we do share a common goal, which is to make racing accessible for all. I actually want to offer a huge thank you to them for hosting this game-changing sporting league, and of course, for inviting me to be a part of it. If you are at home watching this and you want the chance to land a professional racing contract without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it, make sure you sign up to Racing Prodigy's upcoming online tournaments. It really doesn't matter where you come from, how old you are, or how much experience you even have. As long as you have a phone or computer with an internet connection, this could be you later this year. And remember, you have the chance to be selected through the Prodigy Selection Committee, just like our second place finisher, Nathan Saxon. So don't hesitate to at least give it your best shot and submit that video at the end. With all that being said, definitely check out the links in the description for more information, and I will see you guys on the next one.